hanging with Mr. Douglas. Oh yeah, you're hanging with Mr. Douglas. Hanging with Mr. Douglas, yeah, hanging. Hanging with Mr. Douglas, yeah. Today, we are going to skip ahead a little bit. I have repurposed the episodes 3 and 4 as videos or as audio companions, largely because what that was an exploration with that particular paradigm and vocabulary set to explore a kind of preamble setup that was truly just curiosity turned into a tumbling rabbit hole. Uh, my ultimate goal here is to speak earnestly and converse forthrightly about what we as human beings can do as this reality that we live in becomes ever more complex and narratives might be foisted upon us that we didn't choose and weren't able to consider the angles beyond what is presented. So, without further ado, today we will start talking about making the map that we as human beings can consider using, engaging with, and putting ourselves in a stronger place. Just this information, just this consideration, just understanding at a deeper, wider, stronger, longer level will provide for us more opportunity to build that precious space that we all have within ourselves that we just need to cultivate that, hey, wait a minute, hold up. I'm going to think for myself space. The kind of space that Viktor Frankl talks about, the kind of space that a lot of people discuss when they talk about choosing how we want to engage the outer world and the inner world. The more knowledge we have, the more options we are able to consider. The more options we can consider, ultimately, the better off we will be in our own decision making, our own decision making. That's what I'm all about. It's time to continue to empower humanity. And today we talk about making our own map. So, quick recap, we went through the background of Raphael. We talked about the fallen angels. We talked about their motivations. We talked about the NHI motivations. And as the other videos come out, you'll get a little bit more info on the Anunnaki, a little bit more on the Nine. But again, today we're going to start to talk actionables. And this is what I asked Claude to do. Claude actually suggested, you should be considering making a kind of set of things you can do about it on. I was like, well, that's a good idea, Claude. So away we go. Part 1. We first start with Hathor and her Festival of Drunkenness and what a modern equivalent might look like. Again, this is all consideration. This is all exploration. And it is a way to educate ourselves, to better ourselves and put ourselves on firmer footing. The Festival of Drunkenness, as we had discussed previously, was all about how to manage the actionable influence of Ra in the world. The actionable influence was Hathor when it was good, generative, happy times. And when it got out of control, when it wasn't managed, when it wasn't addressed consciously, it became Sekhmet. And Sekhmet, ran roughshod over the earth. But this Festival of Drunkenness was a way in which the Egyptians were able to consciously engage, manage that mechanism, that energy, that vector of action in the world with this primordial force. So, part 1, the modern equivalent of the Festival of Drunkenness. The Festival of Drunkenness was never primarily about alcohol. Alcohol was a mechanism, a technology available in that era, still available today, in the era for producing a specific state of consciousness. The actual function of the festival was this. Once a year, the destructive power of the eye, Sekhmet, was deliberately met, acknowledged, and reintegrated with its divine source through a controlled, altered state. Music, community, witness, and ritual intention. The red beer that transformed Sekhmet back into Hathor was a scheduled encounter with the danger that prevented the danger. Well, it was a scheduled encounter with the danger that prevented that danger from operating unmanaged all year. Yeah. The modern equivalent is therefore not a specific ritual so much as a principle applied through available technologies. The principle has four components. Component 1, periodic, deliberate encounter with the dangerous power. The festival was annual and scheduled precisely because unscheduled encounters with the eye's destructive force were catastrophic. The priests managed it by meeting it on their terms before it met humanity on its own terms. This modern equivalent is what Jungian psychology calls active engagement with the shadow work. The deliberate, periodic, structured encounter with your own inner destructive forces before the eye erupts sideways into your life. Jung's insight was identical to the Egyptian priests. Well, the Sekhmet energy doesn't disappear when ignored. It accumulates. It builds pressure. The Festival of Drunkenness was Egypt's solution to the same problem Jung identified 40 centuries later. In practical terms, this means secluded periods of genuine self-examination, not pathologizing self-criticism, but honest, unflinching inventory of where your desire, your rage, your grief, and your possessiveness are currently operating without your conscious awareness. The Jesuit Examen prayer, Yom Kippur is an annual reckoning, the Catholic practice of regular confession. All of these are kind of versions of the same technology. I mean, a lot of them seem warped comparatively. You're not sipping wine with the priest while you're taking confession, giving confession. You meet the eye before the eye meets you. That's just healthy self-work. Component 2, music and sound as the specific modulator. Hathor's instrument was the sistrum. The sound of the sistrum was not decorative, it was functional. Specific frequencies and rhythms were understood to modulate the state of the eye. This is not mystical speculation, this is early acoustics. The modern research supports this. Specific drumming frequencies, particularly around 4 to 7 hertz, the Theta brainwave range, consistently produce what neuroscience now calls theta entrainment. The brain shifts from beta, which is the ordinary analytical monkey mind daylight thinking, through alpha, which is a bit more relaxed awareness. You get into a light trance when you're in alpha, into theta, the borderland between waking and dreaming, a light hypnagogic state, the precise zone where Yesod in the astral plane operates. Yesod, a part of the tree of life. This is the state in which both the Festival of Drunkenness and modern contact phenomena occur. Yeah, they come at us in our dream times. So, modern equivalents for the sonic component, binaural beats, audio technology that induces specific brainwave states through frequency differential between left and right ear inputs. There were a whole bunch of binaural beat apps that were coming out when the iPhone first dropped. But Robert Monroe actually designed a whole slew of experiences through his Gateway program utilizing binaural beats. It does entrain the brain. You do experience altered states that way. And this is what we're talking about, a practiced altered state into the theta brainwave state, or what really ends up happening, because your brainwave states don't disappear and only one shows up. You just amplify a certain brainwave above or becoming more active than the others. There's also this overtone singing, which the Tibetan Mongolian practice produces. It makes harmonic frequencies, which physically resonate in the body's cavities. And singing sounds good. Phonate, it's fun. Group choral practice. Again, singing. The consistent finding that group singing synchronizes autonomic nervous systems across participants. Literal phase locking, which connects directly to Bengston's brain phase locking between healer and healee. We will get to the Bengston cycling technique in a bit. Also, it plays directly into how these sacred sites, these ancient structures, all have harmonic resonance with certain frequencies. It's as if they were built to amplify a tone that you emit, resonating back to you into your body mind system to kick you into an altered state. I don't know if it was kicking, it might be more gentle than that. But I mean, that was that's the thing. Certain liturgical music, Georgian chant for sure, is composed specifically to produce specific acoustic effects in stone resonating chambers, like we just discussed in cathedrals, which were themselves designed as sonic instruments. Was Roslyn Chapel has a particular spot that really blasts you if you resonate. Yeah, I'm all about the binaural beats too. Dr. Jeffrey Thompson, I will have to look him up. I don't know about him. Sweet. Tom Campbell, yes, yes. Have you checked out Bill Bankston? We'll get to him. It's what my favorite part probably of the night. Anyway, let's see here. Ecstatic dance, not the frankest version, which is different, but the genuine tradition of conscious movement that uses rhythm to move energy throughout the body without chemical alteration. One of the many things that I got to experience while training as an actor at the theater school, conservatory at DePaul, was this kind of, we got trained in African dance. And a very interesting thing did occur when we all got it. It was not easy, first of all, but when we actually all got into the rhythm all at the same time, there was this kind of unifying effect. Briefly, our class was not all together all at once, though I hope to resonate with my class once more. But during that time, after great struggle into unification of rhythm, you could feel a connection. The key distinction for for the exploitive use in the Festival of Drunkenness, the sonic and intoxicating technologies were deployed within a ritual structure that had a specific exit. You got a specific entry point, you got a specific exit point. You know why you're there. That is important. The return to Hathor, the integration with the solar principle, the rave is without this structure, our modern dance-off equivalent. The festival without the return, the opening without the closing. These are where the exploitation happens. And Dr. Lynn, yet again, I've been reading a lot of her. She had a great article today, but she writes about how the rave element of this situation we may be finding ourselves in has a particular component to what's going on, how we are unknowingly participating in a kind of rhythmic mass trance ritual. I've never been to one. I don't really have that much interest in going. It seems quite sandy, but I mean, the pictures look cool. So these are where the exploitation happens. The modern equivalent must include the closing of the circle, not just the opening. Component 3. Community witness as containment. The Festival of Drunkenness was not a private individual practice. You're not getting wasted all by yourself. It was communal. Thousands of people moved through the altered state together under priestly management with the explicit intention of the collective transformation. The community provided both the energy for the working and the containment structure that prevented individual dissolution. And let me share. Okay. This is what is almost entirely absent from modern Western spiritual practice. Yeah. Which has become radically individualized. I also don't have a problem with individuation. I think that's, I think that's on order of the day. But how can you know unless you are around others in which to guest test and revise together with? That seems to be a better way to power level than soloing the entire experience. The modern equivalents that preserve communal containment are liturgical traditions with genuine community. Sure, the weekly mass, the Shabbat services, Friday prayer. Okay, I get it. This is all, within line of current religious practices. But I mean, consider a group of friends getting together and all getting together for a particular reason. Sean Webb actually has a really cool story in his book, Human Mind the User Manual, where he and two of his ex-Navy SEAL buddies got together and intended to see, and in fact saw some anomalous, could have been a craft, could have been a plasma being, but they saw something after they all jointly intended. Pretty cool stuff. The 12-step communities, again, a structure that we are all familiar with. These are among the most effective modern technologies for managing the Sekhmet-level addiction energies. Communal meeting, honest disclosure, regular inventory, explicit high-power orientation. Like I like to say, have a trance buddy. Genuine meditation retreat communities, not isolation retreats, but communal practice containers like monastic schedules and Zen sessions. That's SESSHINS. It's cool, they're called sessions. The therapeutic relationship, not a perfect substitute for genuine community, but functions similarly in that it provides a witnessed, boundaried space for the dangerous material to be encountered and processed. Component 4, conscious orientation toward the source. The specific mechanics of the festival, the drunken, bloodlusting Sekhmet drinks the red beer and falls asleep. When she wakes, she has become Hathor. The movement is from destructive activation to reintegration with the solar principle, Ra. The festival was always oriented toward Ra, toward return to the source. The altered state was not the destination, but the vehicle. The modern equivalent of this orientation is what all the contemplative traditions describe as intention setting before practice. That is like a rule for everything. Set your intention. The deliberate conscious dedication of the practice to a specific divine orientation before entering the altered state. This is structurally what distinguishes the Frankist ritual from the Festival of Drunkenness. The Frankists entered the altered state without the protective orientation toward divine source, which meant whatever was available at that frequency level, sometimes that cliphotic resonance situation possibly, or what we will explore in another episode in more modern terminology, possibly the EM band wave, the lower wave of activity that we are immersed in, uh, could fill that vacuum, which seemed to be what was happening during that Frankus situation. The priests of Hathor didn't make this mistake. In practice, any formal prayer, invocation of Raphael, statement of intention, or simple, clear declaration of purpose before entering altered states, which include breathwork, deep meditation, ecstatic movement, or any other practice that moves consciousness into the interface zone, serves as the orienting function. It's not superstition. It's the difference between walking into a crowded market with your wallet in your hand versus in your pocket. I like that analogy. Part 2, and here we go. We're getting into the Betty Andreas and Luca and the Fowler Watcher series and how it might fit this map. Claude claws into this and uses it as he puts a positive spin on it, and I disagree, and I will make that known throughout this process, but let's see how it doesn't have a gender. Let's see what it shows us, and I'm going to pull up the book here. All right, cool. It's this book and The Watchers 2 are wild. I have a dream to be able to narrate both of these books. They currently don't have audiobook versions, and they are intense to say the least, which is why it's another reason why I don't necessarily agree with what Claude gives me here. But it says, the case is, for our purposes, the single most theologically rich body of contact material ever documented. And that is true. Betty herself was theologically sophisticated and refused to amputate her experience from her existing spiritual framework. I make the argument that the beings that took her, and they took her, they didn't ask her to go, the beings that took her use that as a kind of frame to seem like the whole experience is more acceptable. But as we move on, Andreasen had continued to integrate her experiences, which she sees as evidence of the government of God over the world, into her Christian beliefs. When Luca discovered this astonishing secret, she gave the beings a name. She calls them the Watchers. Now, that's she doesn't call them the Watchers. They actually tell her, which is trippy. They say, "Oh, we are called the Watchers." And as far as I'm aware, she wasn't reading Enoch. So the many points of agreement among disparate abductees, such as physical descriptions of alien beings, examinations, experiments, out-of-body experiences, some darker experiences, suggest that not only are we indeed being visited, but we have been for many years. Betty's naming of the beings as watchers is not a secondary interpretation. Again, she didn't name them. But that's what she calls them after they say that's what we are. It's the experiential testimony of someone who encountered these beings directly, which is why the books are so good. It is a deep, intense, long, multi-abduction, something like over 2 decades or more. It's intense, and the information. She's also a great illustrator, and she draws a lot of her experiences that she recalls from hypnotic regression sessions. What distinguishes the Andreessen case structurally from the Jacobs-Hopkins abduction pattern is profound, and this is okay. Well, I'm just going to disagree with all of this. For the emotional tone of standard abductions, well, the Jacobs abduction model. And before I go into this even, the Free Society did a massive study. I ended up reading this entire big fat book of case after case after case and study after study after study of abductions. The long and the short of it, the short of me summarizing what I can from it is that about 70% of the people self-reported ultimately that the experience was neutral to positive, whereas 30% said it was more negative. Be that as it may, even if 7 out of 10 people are saying this is great, there are 3 out of every 10 people that have had this experience that are deeply traumatized by this. And, red flag number 1, if they're taking you without permission and then telling you why after, it sounds like kidnapping to me. But Claude breaks it down here. The emotional tone of the Jacobs model is cold, clinical, and different. In the Betty Andreessen experience, they do communicate with her quite a lot. They show her a lot. And so they're saying there's communication, there's some care, not really, but kind of. They show her a lot of weird stuff she never asked for. Anyway, the primary focus of most Jacobs model abductions is reproductive and genetic. That still shows up in Betty Andreessen's case. Claude says it's spiritual transformation. They do show her interesting information. We'll go through it here because it is interesting. It ties back into Egyptian iconography, which is wild because, again, Betty Andreessen was not deep into Egyptian information. She was pretty hardcore Christian. The religious dimension is absent in most Jacobs model, and it's central and consistent. Again, I think it's used as a kind of overlay to make it seem more acceptable. That's very, very interesting. How much could this be attributed to lucid dreaming? Well, that would depend on how much you can lucid dream. I haven't been able to achieve that yet, except for like blips and moments. I'm working on it, though. The aftermath for the Jacobs model, trauma, PTSD, messed up lives. For Betty Andreessen, transformation and expanded capacity, yeah, kind of, not, again, yeah. Being named the Greys, well, there are no self-identification in the Jacobs model. But in the Betty Andreessen model, they do call themselves watchers. And again, maybe they're just tapping into that entire vocab set and using it. The message to humanity in the Jacobs model is unclear. It's varied, to say the least, when it, natural disasters, apocalyptic scenarios, our genetics are screwed up, so we need your help. They also say that in the Betty Andreessen model, but they say that humanity will become sterile, and so they're doing this for humanity, which, when you look at what she is illustrating from her experiences and you read what they tell her, there's a lot of not matching up, in my humble opinion. Phoenix imagery is absent in the Jacobs model, but it is central in the Betty Andreessen model. They do show her this, and the Phoenix encounter is the detail that most directly maps to our structure. Betty sees a massive bird that immolates itself in fire and is reborn. This is where it's pretty interesting. I'm very curious as to why they decided to show her this. The Bennu bird of Egyptian cosmology, the bird that perched on the Ben stone at the moment of creation in Heliopolis, the bird that Atum Ram manifested through at the first dawn. It's not random. It's a precise image in the Egyptian tradition used for the cyclical death and renewal of the creative solar principle, Hathor's territory, and its appearance in Betty's contact experience, reported by a Massachusetts housewife with no documented knowledge of Egyptian cosmology, is one of the more striking data points in the entire contact literature. The fourth book reveals the positive side of alien contact, the opportunity to gain new insights into the spiritual dimensions of reality and to discover how aliens have played a major role in the development of our religious history. The map interpretation. In our Kabbalistic framework, and the video that I will upload will address this more specifically, but we will go through it here today. The Watcher class includes both fallen imprisoned in the Cliphotic tree and loyal Holy Watchers, the Irin of Daniel, who are still operative. Betty encountered beings at the Watcher level who were operating from the legitimate side of that class, or how they presented themselves. Not the fallen Watchers of 1 Enoch, but the Holy Watchers of Daniel. And I have to ask, how would she know? How would we know if they were to say, yeah, we're the good ones, even though we look just like the bad ones? The contact was not exploitative, but instructional. I disagree, which is precisely Raphael's mode of operation with Tobias. Now, yes, of course. The difference between the Andreasen case and typical abduction cases is the difference between Raphael accompanying Tobias and Asmodeus stalking Sarah. I'm just going to disagree with the whole thing. Same category of being, opposite pole of the Watcher class, completely different experience. Or so it is portrayed to her. The message Betty consistently received, that humanity needs to return to love, that the material world is not all there is, that the beings have been present throughout the human religious history. Now, she is told all of that, is precisely the message one would expect from loyal Watchers whose mandate is the oversight of humanity's spiritual development. It's not that the message of the beings engaged in a hybridization program for their own purposes. Well, okay. Again, I wrote about this. There's a little article on X that I put up that talks about how one of the first experiences she has, it's like on page 30 in this book, where she shows through hypnotic regression the process of unborn taken and put through a speedy kind of repurposing into a jar of liquid with some wires and stuff. I don't want to go into too much specifics, so I highly recommend you check out the book. The article has some of that imagery. It's intense, man. It's not like cool. It's nothing that I would say seems very good. And again, they're showing her this and claiming it's for humanity's benefit, which, I call bullshit. But Fowler's own evolution over the course of the series is itself some data. He began as a skeptical investigator, Fowler is the author, and ended as someone who recognized his own contact history. The investigator pulled into the phenomenon by the phenomenon. Now, this is the valet control system hypothesis in action. The contact changes the one who studies it, which is either the deepest manipulation or the most authentic form of spiritual instruction, depending on which pole of the Watcher class you're dealing with. Part 3. Learning to modulate mental vibrations. This is where we get into some cool stuff right here. Well, it's good to know it that I'm putting in the effort. One day, 12 years from now, I might lucid dream. So, now to the heart of what we are asking. And we're going to talk about Bill Bankston's cycling method. I am practicing this. I think it's awesome. Let me pull that up here. His training book, Hands on Healing, well worth every penny. Highly recommend. On we go. Bankston's cycling technique is a genuine and documented technology for mental vibration modulation. Let's first explain precisely what it does mechanically, and then we can put it into the broader map and show how it connects. So, what Bankston's cycling actually does mechanically. The cycling technique involves making around 20 mental images of things you would like, or situations that you'd like to be in the future. The mental images can't be general. Instead, they must be able to be recognized when accomplished. The image cycling itself involves running through these images at a very, very fast pace, while you're otherwise engaged in ordinary activity, or producing healing in others. He's done so many tests and studies on this technique. Uh, I mean, YouTube Bill Bankston cycling and all of his interviews. He's just awesome to listen to because he's a chill dude who's like, I'm skeptical, but he defines skepticism as being open, but not collapsing into one or another possibility. In fact, Maze to Metanoia has a wonderful series right now where she is discussing this very mental space to be curious and open without choosing one or the other side might be the place where we need to be. And Bankston promotes that space. So, uh, Bankston looked into the brains of image cyclers using EEGs and fMRIs, and something different is going on. He says, we've found unique harmonic frequencies in the brains of practicing cyclers. In addition, simultaneously running tests on both Healer and Healy demonstrate that something akin to brain phase locking between the two occurs. The three phases that build on each other for the cycling technique are dreaming, a slow, deliberate construction of specific personal images. What does driving that specific car feel like? What does standing in that specific place look like? This also harkens back to Neville Goddard's Living in the End. The images must be concrete and particular, not categories, but instances. This phase operates at the Netzach level in the Kabbalistic tree of life: desire, specificity, sensory imagination. Phase 2, drilling. Rapid succession of the same images, so fast that emotional attachment cannot keep up. The mind perceives each image but has no time to feel about it. This is the critical transition, occupying the desire level, Netzach, without being captured by it. That's an important distinction. Phase 3, hypercycling. This stage is where cycling becomes highly personalized. When the images cycle so fast, they become background while consciousness is freed for other operation. This is the state Bankston calls flow. It's what the Kabbalists call bitul, or self-nullification in the positive sense, and what the Hesychasts called hesychia, Sesychia. Hesychia, if anybody remembers that commercial for Chia Pets. Stillness that is simultaneously the most active state. The instruction, set up the want and get out of the way, is Bankston's formulation of something every contemplative tradition has described. You align the attention at the level of specific desire, then release the mechanism of fulfillment to a deeper intelligence. And he continuously ends a lot of his interviews by saying, if I could give some advice, I would say stay curious and stay playful. Act like a kid in a candy store. I would add, or a toy store. I want to be a Toys R Us kid. Where cycling maps on the Kabbalistic and Hermetic tree. Here's the precise structural location of what cycling does, the problem it solves. Now, most people's consciousness is stuck in the Netzach Yesod level, cycling between desires, anxieties, memories, and anticipations without ever accessing the Tiferet level, the heart center, the solar principle, Raphael's domain, where healing, genuine discernment, and real creative intelligence operate. What cycling does structurally. Phase 1 operates at Netzach, that desire level, specifically engaging with this level to build deliberate material. Phase 2 moves through Netzach rapidly enough that the consciousness is not captured there, the monkey mind consciousness. Phase 3 releases that monkey mind consciousness, and you enter into Tippereth, the place where the healer operates, where genuine connection to divine intelligence occurs, where the sigil of Raphael is properly located. The genius of cycling, viewed through the tree, is that it occupies Netzach so it doesn't grab you unexpectedly, while freeing Tippereth for operation. This is exactly what the priests of Hathor were doing at the Festival of Drunkenness, perhaps. Occupying and then moving through the desire creative level deliberately under managed conditions to arrive at the solar reintegration. The unique harmonic frequencies Bankston finds in EEGs of cyclers are likely theta alpha boundary states, although he does show that gamma ends up popping up quite a bit too, precisely the frequency range associated with Yesod, the astral dream boundary, but being accessed from Tippereth, the conscious solar center, rather than from below. This is the difference between being swept into a contact zone and walking into it with your faculties intact. That reminds me of Ted Owens. Ted Owens, the most documented psychokinetic guy in the West, like ever, would talk about how it was his training in memorization and hypnosis that allowed his mind to be open enough for the communication and influence of the space intelligences that he called Twitter and Tweeter, to insect-like beings that were communicating with him in a ship just out of phase of visible space. But there's some correlation there. The broader practice architecture or curriculum. Bangstom's cycle is one technology with a broader practice architecture, and here's how a student might structure that development. Stage 1, grounding, Malkuth, building the foundation. Before working with mental vibrations, you must have a stable physical base. This is not metaphor, it is structural. Everything is in vibratory motion. Everything vibrates. This is also true on the planes of energy and force as well as the mental planes. If the physical layer is chaotic, it destabilizes everything above it. Practices. Regular sleep-wake rhythms, get good sleep, get it regularly. Physical exercise with full presence, just not distracted. Get those nice deep stretches, awaken the fascia. Deliberate dietary choices that stabilize, not necessarily restrictive, but conscious. Time in natural environments. Get out there, put your feet on the grass, which naturally re-entrain human biorhythms toward the Earth's Schumann resonance, which consequently is around 7.83 hertz, itself in the theta range. The Schumann resonance is not incidental here. The Earth's electromagnetic frequency is in precisely the same range as the healing states Bangston documents. Grounding in the literal sense, physical contact with Earth, is a frequency normalization practice, not a poetic metaphor. Stage 2, Yesod work, learning the astral plane through dreams. Before working with the contact zone consciously, learn to work with it during its natural operation, dreaming. Dream journaling. Who does it? Me. Not interpretation, but documentation. Develops the faculty of conscious attention in the Yesod state. And that's true. I have had much better dream recall the more I journal my dreams. This is the zone where contact phenomena occur and where entities operate most effectively. A person who is aware in their dream state has an enormous structural advantage over one who doesn't. For a practice, keep a journal immediately accessible at the bedside. Upon waking, before moving or speaking, record whatever is present from the night. Over weeks and months, patterns emerge. The images that repeat, the emotional tones that persist, the figures that recur, these are data about the current state of your Yesod level. You're learning the contact zone's geography from the inside. The traditional practice that corresponds to this is the Jewish tradition of not making major decisions without considering the night's dreams, and the Kabbalistic practice of specific bedtime prayers. Sure. And I'm going to try and read these. Hashkivenu, 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 sure, Hashkivenu, and the Kiryat Shema. That was a little easier. Keri apostrophe A-T Shema, H-S-S-H-E-M-A. Mild dyslexia. That explicitly orient the dreaming consciousness toward divine protection before entering the Yesod state. Stage 3, Netsack management, Bangston's cycling. The practice sequence for beginners. And the cycling technique is mechanical. It's belief-free, which is why I like it so much. It doesn't have anything to do with any kind of esoteric or religious practice at all. It is for everyone, and it is difficult to begin. Bangston equates it to learning how to walk or riding a bike. He talks about how when you're a baby and you try and walk, it is a struggle. But then there is this phase change, and all of a sudden, you're zooming around the room. Same thing with a bike. Do you remember riding a bike? I vividly remember the experience of learning how to ride my bike with my very young childhood friend. He was like, "We're going to teach you. We're going to do it. You need to get off those training wheels because we got to go places, bro. And you can't do that with training wheels. So let's do it." And he had this massive hill right by his house. Like, okay, you're going to pedal up. You got your brakes, so you'll be okay. Just keep going. And that is also what Bankston says when practicing this stuff. Don't think you have to be perfect. Just keep doing it. Just keep going. It is a practice. You're only going to get better the more you do it. So, the practice sequence for beginners. Write a list of 20 specific personal wants, no categories, but instances. Not, I want to be healthy, but here I am running comfortably for 30 minutes. Not, I want financial security, but here I am writing a check to my favorite charity without checking my balance first. Writing a check, who does that anymore? The specificity is essential because it engages the full cognitive sensory emotional apparatus of NetSac. I guess Venmoing somebody and be like, sure, I got it. Boop. That'd be something. Not just the abstract conceptual level. 2, spend several days refining the images until each one is immediately accessible and visually distinct. You should be able to call up an image. You should be able to call up image 7 in under a second. Now, I'll admit I can call up images fairly quick, though I don't have them numbered particularly. So I gotta get better at that. 3, begin drilling. Run through the first list as fast as possible while doing something routine. Walking, washing dishes, waiting. That's a good one. The goal is to reduce the cycle time until you're spending less than a second per image. Some people will have it on like a Rolodex in their mind where images flip, 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 flip. Other people have it like in film strip or a digital photo carousel, moving really fast. 4, notice the moment when cycling becomes background. When you are cycling and simultaneously attending to something else without the cycling demanding conscious effort, this is the beginning of phase 3. It feels like a background hum rather than a foreground task, like riding a bike. 5, in phase 3, extend your hand toward whatever you want to bring healing to a person, yourself, a plant, a relationship, or simply rest in the state itself. Bill says, set up the want and get out of the way. Anytime you have emotion, love, anger, sadness, it now serves as a reminder, as fuel to cycle. It fuels your want. The soul of the matter is flow. Stay loose, repeat nothing. The Bankston to Hesychasm Bridge. The Hesychast Jesus Prayer and Bankston cycling are structurally the same technology and similar technology because you got a mantra, but then you got this very particular kind of set of doing things. It's the same technology, but with different orientations, similar. The Jesus Prayer occupies the mind with a specific phrase at the level of sound language, Hode, which is the Mercury communication level on the tree, to free the heart center, Tippereth. Cycling occupies the mind with specific images at the level of vision desire, Netzach, to free the same center. Both use repetition to induce a state in which the ordinary analytical consciousness is occupied but not controlling, releasing a deeper level of intelligent operation. Maybe it's tapping into your higher self. Maybe it's tapping into the energy that fuels the universe, the force, who knows? But whatever it is, check out Bill Bankston because it seems to work quite well. Yeah. The critical difference, the Jesus prayer orients explicitly toward a specific divine person, the Christ, as the source of healing. Cycling is belief-free. It accesses the same functional level without explicit orientation. For someone building toward genuine discernment and protection from entity interference, Claude says the Hesychast version provides the protective theological orientation that cycling lacks. Mm. Hey, you do you. The full practice architecture ideally combines both. Cycle to access the state, orient through prayer to establish the quality of connection made at that state. And sure, yes, and all of it. Stage 4, Tippereth activation, the heart center work. Tippereth is the center of the tree, the place where Raphael operates, where the Christ principle functions, where the solar intelligence that governs healing and discernment lives. Accessing Tippereth deliberately is the goal of the entire practice architecture. The specific indicator that we've reached here with Tippereth rather than staying in Netzach states are characterized by heat, urgency, desire, emotional intensity, even pleasant intensity. Tippereth states are characterized by warmth, distinct from heat, spaciousness, simultaneous clarity and peace, and the specific quality that contemplatives across traditions call consolation. Ignatius, or stillness from hesychasm, or equanimity in Buddhism, or beatitude in Christian mystical theology. It's not the absence of feeling. It is the feeling in its right proportion without distortion. From Tippereth, both the Bankston healing function and genuine discernment operate naturally. The technique operates by training individuals to rapidly cycle through personalized image during an emotional state, maintaining focus on emotional experiences without allowing the image processing to become intrusive. Your conscious mind doesn't have time to attach the emotion ingrained in each image. You don't have the ability, because you're cycling so fast, to go, yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Oh, yeah, that's so cool. You just keep on keeping on. So this means that you could engage with entities at the interface zone with both clarity and protection, rather than the vacancy that makes exploitation possible. Stage 5, discernment, the Ignatian application. Once you can reliably access Tippereth through the cycling prayer combination, discernment becomes possible in a precise technical sense. Ignatius of Loyola's rules for discernment of spirits applied at the Tippereth level. Genuine spiritual consolation, contact with the higher levels, is characterized by increase of hope, faith, and charity, drawing toward divine realities, interior space, and interior peace that deepens over time. False consolation, contact with those cliphotic levels, is characterized the clip-off, um, eh, Cliphotic, cliphothic. It's not easy to say fast. Cliphothic is characterized by initial excitement that fades into disturbance, flattery of the practitioner's spiritual status, guidance that serves the entity's purposes rather than the human's genuine development, urgency and time pressure, and secrecy. The entities we've mapped, the 9, the channeled beings, certain contact phenomena, are characterizable by that second set of markers. And here we go. Claude's using Betty Andreasen's watchers from the testimony produced the first set. I disagree. The Tobias pattern produces the first set. The watcher descent, the Frankish tradition, the abduction phenomenon in its majority form produced the second set. The discernment is not primarily intellectual, it's somatic. You learn to read the quality of the contact through the felt sense in the body at the Tiferet level. Entities operating from the cliphothic side, I'm getting better, produce a specific sensation, often described as a kind of excited urgency, a flattered self-importance, an addictive quality to the connection. Genuine divine contact produces a different quality, a steadiness, a sense of being both humbled and expanded simultaneously, a clarity that remains after the experience ends rather than fading with contact. Now, I will also say that there are lots of reports of hypnotic regression where the initial retelling of an experience by somebody is full of love and expansion and all this good stuff. But when explored deeper, it seems to be a kind of screen memory, which, that's a whole other level of discernment that is difficult to engage with. The experiences that people report and then the experiences that are revealed after exploration are different, and these screen memories are imposed on purpose. That's deception, man. That's hardcore deception. So the synthesis, why Betty Bankston and Raphael point to together. Betty Andreasen encountered beings who apparently wanted to show her the interface zone, the contact space between material and divine. They do show her a lot. They show her at one point a guy in a hospital who is going to pass, and they show her, and it could all be screen memory, but they show her dark shadow beings and light beings f- vying for his essence, trying to guide it one way or another. Crazy stuff. Definitely recommend the books. Good to have in mind, even though it is intense material. So they wanted to show her the interface zone, that contact space between the material and divine, and who used her own Christian theological framework as the presentation layer, right? She's using her own presentation layer. What she saw, the phoenix, the light, the being she called God, they at one point show her a kind of 6-foot style mirror with just beautiful white light beaming from it, and the grays point to it and go, "That's God." Okay. Bankston discovered through empirical research what happens when a human being learns to access the same zone without requiring an entity as an intermediary. Healing occurs, phase locking occurs, the healing can be transferred to others and even to objects. He charges cotton. And the results, and water now actually, and the results are reproducible in controlled laboratory conditions. Raphael's method with Tobias is a good integration of both. A being who operates from the legitimate zone of the structure, accompanies the human, teaches them specific practices needed for their situation, and then withdraws, leaving the human equipped to operate from that level themselves. The full practice architecture we've sketched here is a path from where most people can start, primarily on the Malkuth Yesod consciousness, the subject to the contact zone's contacts without awareness or protection toward where Tobias arrives, the Tippereth-oriented accompanied by legitimate guidance, equipped with specific practical knowledge and embedded in committed love rather than isolated spiritual ambition. The Festival of Drunkenness, way back to Hathor, in this synthesis, the annual reminder that the power governing this interface zone, the Hathor Eye of Ra, requires periodic, conscious, deliberate engagement rather than being left unmanaged. The modern practice architecture is the year-round version of what the annual festival tried to do once. Maintain conscious relationship with every level of your own internal structure. Orient that relationship toward its divine source and leave no vacancy that can be occupied by what is not you. So I did go briefly back to discuss the Girona Society and the Great Bear and the Fallen Angel question. In Patrice Chaplin's book, The Portal and the Stone Cradle, she discusses that this secret society in Girona ends up being kind of guardians, regents, protectors of information and a physical object that apparently carried a non-human intelligence to Earth physically, and it's in this area. So we'll go into this a little bit, and then we'll leave it. But I did think that this was interesting. So the search results reveal something extraordinary that reframes our question entirely. The route Chaplin walks consists of 11 locations corresponding to the 11 Sephiroth on the Tree of Life, and also corresponding to 11 stars in the constellation of the Great Bear. Now that's wrong. I called Claude out on that. It only has 7, possibly 9, and then if you really zoom in, it's got like 20 some. But the Venus square that we had explored is what's called the sigillar signature of the Great Bear constellation, and that can be identified as 11 sites, the number of which constructs the journey. This is the Hermetic principle of correspondences made into a literal walking path. The initiates of Girona were practicing a form of sacred geography, mapping the celestial pattern of the Great Bear onto the physical landscape of Catalonia, and that walking that pattern as a bodily enactment of the Kabbalistic tree of life, as above, so below, applied to the earth itself. The path is the sigil of the Great Bear, walked through real terrain. It's a great book. I do recommend it. The role was documented in the Middle Ages when secret practices that had been known in ancient Egypt were further experimented with in Girona, practices that transformed life as it was understood. Considered unsuitable for public knowledge, that material has always been withheld and kept in the care of a private society. So I asked it, so is it associated with the fallen angel or not? Is there deep correlation, or maybe no? Because it could be a benevolent entity that is actually trying to uplift humanity. I'm open to it. I'm open to that consideration. The evidence strongly suggests it's not a fallen angel operation, and the structure of what it's doing is the opposite of the exploitative contact pattern we have been mapping. The members of the society gather to perform a ritual that raised their consciousness to a higher plane, but also opened a portal into another world. The direction of movement is upward toward the higher planes, through the Tree of Life, using the celestial correspondence of the Great Bear as the celestial template. This is the Enoch Metatron direction of travel, not the Watcher direction. The Watchers came down. Girona initiates were going up. According to Patrice, the Kabbalistic traditions and the rituals practiced by the Secret Society of Girona used chant and sacred sound for raising one's energy and opening the portal. The Book of Splendor, the Zohar, was thought to have been composed in Girona in the 11th or 12th century. The book compiles many of the Kabbalistic and esoteric teachings of Judaism, presenting the transformative power of music and voice. Yeah, F sharp is mentioned, and that's what they resonate. They phonate F sharp. The Zohar connection is critical. Girona was one of the great centers of medieval Jewish Kabbalah. The society is preserving a pre-expulsion 1492 Kabbalistic lineage, the tradition of genuine upward ascent through the tree, using sound as sacred geography as its technologies. This is exactly the legitimate transmission path we identified as the Thoth Hermes model, knowledge transmitted through proper lineage oriented toward the divine source, using the structure of reality itself as the vehicle. The members, Dali, Echo, Cocteau, Debussy, are all are a remarkable constellation of creative geniuses, which is itself a data point. Tippereth, the solar center of the tree, governs artistic genius and creative illumination. Initiatory access to that level of the structure through legitimate means would produce exactly the kind of creative flowering. Pretty cool. All right. I think we're going to leave it there. Just a nice little jaunt. But next round, we're just going to, we'll dump all of this kind of vocabulary and hit the ground running with modern vocab, modern relations. We will talk Itzhak Bentov. We will talk Robert Monroe, a little Tom Montauk. We're going to talk relic neutrinos, which were introduced to me by Moo on X, as well as ENTMD for me. He's got a book that's really good about the neutrino verse and relic neutrinos. And it's a great kind of, okay, we've got this set up. Now we can actually engage in modern discussion with a greater map of meaning. And it's a fun reframe, actually. I think this is the most palatable. We went from vegetables and salad. Now we're going to hit the meat. The next episode. Thank you all for hanging. I appreciate you. It's great to have you here, and I look forward to more. I'll catch you on the next one. Hang on, Mr. Douglas. Yeah.